The business of beauty can be very ugly, especially in the cutthroat world of modelling. It's an industry that wants to portray itself as the epitome of health and happiness. The reality, though, is anything but. Anorexia, drug use and bullying are as routine as smiling for the cameras. Now, a very determined and brave Australian supermodel is demanding change. And Bridget Malcolm is starting with the iconic lingerie company that made her famous. Victoria's Secret is renowned for its so-called angels, but she says behind the scenes, devils were at work.
Gorgeous.
It's no secret that for decades, Victoria's Secret was one of the most talked about brands in the world, mostly because of its iconic annual fashion show. You knew the impossibly glamorous angels by their first names. Claudia in the early days, then Giselle, Heidi, Miranda and Kendall. The performers too, Gaga, Taylor, Kanye. Everyone who was anyone wanted to be there.
In its heyday, the Victoria's Secret fashion show was the Supermodel Olympics.
A few years ago, Australian sensation Bridget Malcolm strutted that famous runway.
Do Australians do this any differently to anyone else?
I mean, I reckon we're pretty
like
chill. Yeah.
But behind her bright eyes and big smile was a sinister story.
I'm smiling, but I know the way I look. The look in my eyes is dead. I was dead. Hello and welcome to my series, Times when the Fashion Industry Has Really Sucked.
There have been whispers for years about the dark side of the fashion industry.
Times I've been attacked, times I've been assaulted, times I've been harassed.
But Bridget Malcolm will be silent no more, now becoming arguably the highest profile whistleblower we've seen, detailing the forces that nearly destroyed her career and crippled her health.
I've been groomed by a much older man. I've been sexually assaulted multiple times. I've been told to do cocaine to lose weight by my agent. I'd been told whilst I was underage to just have lots of sex to lose weight.
Work, girl!
It's a bold move standing up to the powerful men in this industry, but Bridget says it's time for a total makeover. In particular, Victoria's Secret is her biggest target, a brand with previous links to Jeffrey Epstein, where a culture of misogyny, body shaming and abuse was widespread.
I mean, I once had one of the top photographers from Victoria's Secret say, if you got skinnier, you will become an angel. I got a very interior glimpse at the machine that was running at that time, and it was really sick. It was really unhealthy.
Was there a light bulb moment where you thought, this can't go on?
Yeah. It was at the start of 2017, and it took me 10 minutes to climb a flight of stairs, and I just reached the top and I just had that awful hollow feeling of like, this is what the rest of my life is going to look like unless I do something about it now.
It's a much healthier Bridget Malcolm that we spoke with in New York. Still working in the industry that almost broke her, but now much pickier about her clients. She spent more than half her life working as a professional model after being scouted on the streets of Perth at the age of 14, an agent encouraging her to enter the Vivian's Model Search Contest.
So I entered the competition and I wound up getting third. But one of my dear friends was one of the judges, and she said, you were very weird looking, to put it lightly. I hadn't quite grown into myself, and I had this like red mullet that I'd cut myself. I had braces, like I was awkward. And she's like, you needed a little bit more time. And I eventually grew into myself, and here I am 16 years later.
Now, what would you tell that young girl that turned up to the model search that day?
Oh boy, that's a big question. Maybe I would say to her, get into therapy early.
At the age of 15, an impressionable young Bridget was told by her agent to lose weight. And so she simply stopped eating, marking the beginning of a decade-long battle with eating disorders, perpetuated by an intoxicating image-based industry. She says the message was simple: the thinner, the better. Was it right that you were told to do cocaine and have more sex?
Yeah, over the years I've heard all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, what always worked for me was just to not eat.
Do you remember what the longest period was that you went without food?
So the longest I managed to go without eating was 3 days, and I had to quit because I kept passing out. And I was annoyed with myself because I was determined to make it to 5 days, but I couldn't. Like, I couldn't function, I couldn't move, and it was incredibly frustrating. I remember being so angry with myself and feeling as though I'd failed somehow in not being able to survive on just water for that long. In every which way, I was a shell. Like personality, mental, physical, emotional, all of it. I was just a shell. It was awful.
Ironically, as Bridget hit rock bottom, she was more in demand as a model than ever before. Her success defied the trauma her body was going through as a result of the incessant pursuit of weight loss. At 25, she stopped menstruating, her hair was falling out, and she could hardly climb a flight of stairs, let alone walk a runway. She says nowhere was the pressure to be dangerously skinny more apparent than at Victoria's Secret. But ultimately, it was being dumped by that very brand that sent her spiralling. The waif-thin model claims they told her she was too big after gaining ½ an inch on her hips. How clear was the message from Victoria's Secret that you needed to be super skinny?
Pretty clear. I had an eating disorder. I was reliant on anti-anxiety medication. I was having panic attacks constantly. I was exhausted. My body was malnourished, my mind was malnourished, and it was relentless. What that company represented for me and for so many other women was extremely exploitative at that time. You know, to me, it felt like controlling women, getting women as small as possible, and then even not being small enough. Like, it was, I'm still honestly trying to wrap my head around it, and I last had contact with them 4 years ago. So, yeah, it takes time, I guess.
There'll be people watching this saying, no one forced you to starve yourself.
Yeah, nobody was holding a gun to my head. And so for the people who say, like, you know, no one was forcing you to do this, I say, you're right. I completely agree with you. However, you're incredibly privileged to not have had the experience of being in an unhealthy relationship like that. It felt very controlling, and it felt, I don't know, I've never experienced anything like it before, and I hope to never again. Like, it was truly quite a traumatic experience.
Bridget's story is sadly not unique, as now more and more brave women are exposing the toxic and misogynistic culture that ran rampant at Victoria's Secret.
You get harassed, bullied, and then you also get silenced. It's just another form of abuse, essentially.
It does sound like this was effectively a culture of abuse.
Yeah, and I think it was like a chain of abuse that kind of like went from the top level and trickled down.
The sexiest show on earth, canceled, with critics saying it's outdated and sexist.
For millions of women, Victoria's Secret was the ultimate in glamour.
Toxic culture at Victoria's Secret. Models being ogled by executives, manhandled and harassed.
But recently, the empire has begun crumbling.
The dirty secret at Victoria's Secret.
We've seen Victoria's Secret stores shut down. All its sales decline.
Behind the star-studded shows, insiders are revealing a culture of bullying and misogyny.
I worked so hard for this company. I show up, I do good work. I'm so passionate about my job, and that's what really like felt hurtful for me, was this like disrespect.
Crowe Taylor was part of the public relations team at Victoria's Secret. Her job was to help perfect the brand's glamorous annual fashion show.
It was just like everything I could have dreamed of and more, and I just couldn't get enough. I loved it.
Victoria's Secret's image was largely celebrated, although there were a handful of employees talking openly about a sleazy culture behind the scenes. The owner of the brand, Les Wexner, was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and Epstein had leveraged that relationship, luring young models into his web by claiming he was a recruiter for Victoria's Secret. But for Casey, her brutal insight into the slimy reality at the lingerie label came at the hands of Wexner's right-hand man, Ed Razek. He was the high-flying exec who created the VS fashion show and its iconic angels.
What are you doing on November 9th and 10th?
I don't know.
Why don't you come join us?
Really? Yeah!
Every girl we've seen over the last 2 days could have been in any of our first 5 shows. It's just going to be a difficult edit.
His decisions were make or break for so many careers.
Positive energy. Well done.
Keep your clothes on, Ed.
The incident with Ed Razek happened in June 2015. We were on set at Chelsea Pierce Studio, and we have like a catered lunch on set. It's buffet style. So I got up with my plate to go get more of whatever was good. And Ed physically stepped in front of me and stopped me from going up to the buffet. And the first thing he said was like, he was like, "Do you really think you need more bread? Like, are you really going to eat more food?" And so I just froze up. I stood there. He kept going on like, you know, like, how do you look at yourself in the mirror when you leave your house in the morning? How are you okay with the way you look? So I put down my plate, went straight to the bathroom where I had this like really just like shaky kind of shock, tears, just like being like, what even just happened?
On the one hand, it must have been shocking for you that such a powerful man would belittle you like that. But then, on the other hand, was it almost par for the course there?
It felt very normalized. You know, I remember being on set with him and his assistant made this joke that made me feel really awkward. And it was like, she was like, if I had $1 for the amount of sexual harassment complaints that came across my desk, like, I'd be rich. And it was like, they both laughed, and I kind of was like, well, that doesn't feel good.
When Casey complained to her boss rather than investigate, she claims they laughed it off. It was then she discovered numerous other Victoria's Secret employees had made their own sexual harassment complaints about others at the company, only to be silenced with non-disclosure agreements. So do you think it was effectively company policy at Victoria's Secret that anyone who had a complaint about sexual harassment was offer them some money and just hope they go quiet?
Yeah, I know at least 3 people that's happened to, personally. The misuse of NDAs, specifically within Victoria's Secret and other companies, and what frustrates me so much about it is that people are then like locked out of actually telling their story. And it just like silences victims, which is terrible, right? Like, people are scared to tell their story, then they have to carry it around with them.
A PR nightmare is now playing out for Victoria's Secret as numerous examples of a toxic culture come to light. The company has recently settled 2 lawsuits taken against it over bullying and misogyny for tens of millions of dollars, while the man accused of harassing Casey, Ed Razek, has resigned. The incoming CEO pointedly said, we need to stop being about what men want and start being about what women want. Victoria's Secret is now undergoing a massive rebrand in a desperate effort to save its reputation and win back customers. The move includes ditching the iconic Angels, replacing them with the VS Collective, a group of inspiring female activists, athletes and actors to represent the label. What do you think of Victoria's Secret's rebrand?
Look, I don't know how you can rebrand something that has caused so much damage to so many people around the world for so long. It's been decades of this. I don't know, to me, I feel like there needs to be a lot more. There needs to be a public acknowledgement of what has happened. There needs to be some sort of pledge. Otherwise, it's just performative activism, you know, it's performative wokeness.
Mind your head for a second.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Bridget Malcolm has now, quite literally, found her voice.
Hi, my name is Bridget Malcolm, and welcome to the Model Mentality podcast.
After having a breakdown, in part due to her treatment by Victoria's Secret, she underwent 2 years of intense therapy to rebuild her life. And now she's created a podcast to open the conversation around mental health in the fashion industry. It must be frustrating for you sometimes, that stereotype of models as airheads, because you're clearly whip smart, and to do so would be to underestimate how powerful your voice is.
Right, yeah, and it's interesting because there's this idea that, like, as a model, I should just shut up and model, you know? Like, I shouldn't actually add my voice to the global platform, and I get told a lot to stay in my lane, and I'm like, all right, mate, like, you stay in your lane. What's your job? But yeah, I'd love to break that stereotype a little bit.
These days, Bridget is honing her voice in an impressive way, recently completing an internship at the UN in the Department of Global Communications. Going from Victoria's Secret to the United Nations is a fairly unique career trajectory. But this strong young woman now wants to set the model for how those who follow in her footsteps are treated. The smile we saw on the runway at Victoria's Secret, you said was forced. This feels like a real smile that I'm seeing now.
Definitely. I'm genuinely happy these days. I feel genuinely like the luckiest person on the planet to be able to be sitting here speaking to you today. Like, I can't believe that I made it, to be completely honest with you. You know, I have PTSD, I've had an eating disorder, I've struggled with anxiety, with depression, with suicidal ideations. Like, I have been through it, and I'm through it. I'm out the other side, and I'm better for it. And so I want to hopefully pay it forward. I want to hopefully add my voice, and if other people are struggling, they can see that they too can get help and get through it.
Hello, I'm Tom Steinfort. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our Extra Minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au, as well as the 9Now app.